Hello and welcome to another episode of the Expanse Abridged Podcast series. Today I got chapter 41, which is a Holden chapter, and oh boy are we making pace through the book. I think we're at 74%, says the Kindle, which is exciting. So the last time we were with the boys, we were Miller, and Miller had boarded the kind of FOF station, and before that Holden had kind of secured the outer area in the space battle. So now back with Holden, he's going to go join up with Miller on the spaceship, and they're talking to Dresden. First, we're going to get Holden's kind of chatting about what he's thinking about anyway, the kind of space fight, and he's talking about all the damage. So their crew airlock has been sealed after one of the torpedoes that's fired at them tore off the door, filled it with gas, and welded it shut. There were holes all over the ship. They're all in their spacesuits. There isn't even, the O2 system can't even keep the Rocinante full of air. It's all just leaking out the holes. Then they're going to hop over to FOF station. And because the crew airlock is sealed, so they have to do it in their spacesuits and a EVA, which is one of those rocket things. Well, it's like you strap in, it's like a jetpack basically. So Amos is wearing that, and he's going to carry them over. And as they're kind of getting ready for that, it says no one spoke. Holden had expected banter. He'd expected to want banter, but the damaged Rossi seemed to call for silence, maybe awe. And he can't really. At the moment, he sounds funny and smells funny because he's got his nose broken when he hit his head on the inside of his helmet. So he's thinking to himself, he says they'd won, they'd flown right up to the protogen, taken everything the evil bastards could throw at them, and bloodied their noses. Well, him literally. Even now, OPA soldiers were storming their station, shooting the people who'd helped kill Eros. Holden decided that he was okay with not feeling any remorse for them. The moral complexity of the situation had grown past his ability to process it, so he just relaxed in the warm glow of victory. And as he's kind of so yeah, it's an interesting one there, I think, with Holden, because normally you do see him I want to trial, I want to do things by the book, etc., and when it gets a bit too much for him, he's kind of happy just to be like, no, they're the baddies, simple as. Which I think is fair anyway. But yeah, they fly back over, they're looking at all the holes, they're like, fuck, it's full of those Gorse rounds, which is the railgun type stuff. They're lucky none of them hit the reactor. And Holden's flying, and he's like, it would take weeks in a dry dock and probably millions of dollars in damage. Which I think is interesting, because if you think this is a few hundred years in the future, millions, presumably with inflation, first of all, you think there'd be a different currency, but it's still dollars. And then you think millions, if a boat got damaged these days, just a normal boat, it would be in the millions. So that kind of implies there's been huge cost deflation, or I don't know, you think there'd be inflation, because 100 years ago stuff would cost pennies, now it costs pounds. You think in 200 years time it would cost hundreds of pounds for, say, a sandwich, and that's just fine. So an interesting economics point there, which I'm sure people will appreciate, because I have a very smart, intelligent audience. Anyway, they hop over. He meets some belters, and he takes his mask off, and Naomi examines his nose, and she says, it'll be crooked without some cosmetic surgery, but you were too pretty before anyway. It'll give your face some character. And Holden can't stop smiling. And they go up to Ops. So as they're walking up, Amos is like, how's the leg? Because obviously Holden had got shot in the calf and when he was escaping from Eros with Miller. And Holden's like, it's fine. He's talking about Amos' injuries. And because Amos obviously broke his leg when they were on the escaping the Donager, he says, no biggie. The ones that don't kill you don't count. They're kind of walking up, they see loads of bodies on the floor, particularly a lot of people in proto-gen gear more than OPA gear, which makes Holden feel happy, but there's still a lot of dead. And they notice next to some of the scientists, there's a lot of dead scientists, and the OPA guard's like, yeah, they're attackers, and one of them is holding a kitchen knife. So he ran at guys with guns and power armor with a kitchen knife. And they kind of get up, Fred's in the station, Fred's chatting to a guy in an expensive suit with Miller, and obviously the guy in the suit is Dresden, our normal bloke. And Fred's finishing his line of, you'll give me all the kingdoms of earth if I just bow down and do one act of worship. As they arrive, Holden could swear that the detective gave him a warm smile, though on his dour face it was hard to tell. So our boy Miller is kind of happy to see his boy Holden again. They've been reunited. And Fred introduces him, saying, meet Anthony's Dresden. And the asshole in the suit actually reached out like he was going to shake hands. Holden ignored him. They talk about very good, low casualties as well in the OPA team, because they had half their security had non-lethals, riot control, sticky rounds, says Miller. So that really hammering on that point that these guys were not even equipped to defend themselves at all. They start asking about that, and Dresden chuckled. He says, the fact you don't understand this station's security tells me that you have no idea what you've become involved with. So he's obviously doing the standard big dogging them, acting like he controls the room. And Holden says, you need to shut the fuck up. Surprised by a sudden flush of anger, Dresden looked disappointed. Holden wanted the man terrified, begging for his life, not sneering behind his cultured accent. Amos, if he talks to me again without being told to, break his jaw. So now Holden's big dogging our boy. So he's got his balls back, which is nice. They have a bit more conversation. And Holden turned to look at Dresden again, taking in the blue blood European god's look, the gym-sculpted physique, the expensive haircut. Even now, surrounded by men with guns, Dresden managed to look like he was in charge. So this boy is just like full Nazi mode is what we're getting at. He's a cursed European. And he's just, that's kind of the big image for him. And Holden only wants to ask one question. He wants to know why he did it. Dresden obviously laughs at him and goes, because God wanted it that way, or perhaps want to narrow it down for me. And Holden starts asking about Eros, because obviously he went through that kind of nightmare situation. So I'm the guy that found your lost ship, so I've seen the video from Phoebe, because they found the stealth ship a few chapters ago, like probably 20 now, 10. And Dresden then, his smile became a degree more genuine. I have you to thank for turning that viral agent over to us in Eros, because obviously Holden was the guy that helped find Julie Mao's body, and kind of the more proto-gen. Because they kept the sample, they blew up the ship, but they kept some sample on a torpedo, and then they found Julie Mao again. So he's kind of, that's what Dresden's saying. It's like, losing the Anubis was going to put our timeline back months. Finding the infected body already there on the station was a godsend. I knew it. I fucking knew it, Holden thought. Out loud, he said why. So obviously Holden's kind of going, oh god, I've kind of enabled most of this. And Dresden kind of monologues for a little bit about the kind of the project, the molecule in general. He says it's simultaneously proof that we are not alone in the universe, and I'll take it out the limitations that bind us to our little bubbles of rock and air. He talks about 1.5 million people are small potatoes. What we're talking about here is bigger than this. Then he turns to about Genghis Khan, to which Holden and Fred go, what? And Miller only stared at Dresden with a blank expression, tapping the barrel of his pistol against his armoured thigh. And Dresden goes on about Genghis Khan, who killed or displaced a quarter of the people on the planet when he made his empire. And Dresden's like, in today's scale, that would mean killing 10 billion people. I've only killed 1.5 million. It's not even a rounding error. He says there's a civilization out there that built the protein molecule and hurled it at us over 2 billion years ago. They were already gods at that point. What have they become since then, with another 2 billion years to advance? With growing dread, Holden listened to Dresden speak. This speech had the air of something that had been spoken before, perhaps many times, and it had worked. It convinced powerful people. Dresden keeps going. He says a protein molecule can alter the host organism at a molecular level. It can create genetic change on the fly, not just DNA, but any stable replicator. But it's only a machine. It doesn't think. It follows instructions. If we learn how to alter that programming, then we become the architects of that change. And how the protein molecule requires significant mass before it develops enough processing power. So it's very much like a computer, like a biological computer. So the idea is you need 1.5 million people to kill, so you can actually see what it does when it's really going at it. And Dresden's like, we're going to watch it, see it work, see what it intends to do. Holden goes, you could have done that with a vat of bacteria. Dresden says, I'm not interested in remaking bacteria. You're fucking insane, Amos said, and took another step towards Dresden. You figure out how that bug works, and then what? Then everything, says Dresden. Belters who can work outside a ship without wearing a suit. Humans capable of sleeping for hundreds of years at a time, flying colony ships to the stars. What we are doing is the best and only hope of humanity's survival. When we go out there, we will be facing gods. What if we don't go out? Fred asked. He sounded thoughtful. They've already found a doomsday weapon at us once, Dresden said. Then Holden kind of starts thinking to himself. He hated everything about Dresden's argument, but he couldn't quite see his way past it. He knew in his bones that something about it was dead wrong, but he couldn't find the words. Naomi's voice startled him. Did it convince them? She asked. Excuse me, Dresden said. The scientists, the technicians, everyone you needed to make it happen. She kind of goes on to explain, like, this is a huge operation. You've done something incredibly immoral. And, this is a speech you would have given to these people. Did it work on them? And he talks about their science team. And Dresden talks about the science team, and he goes, we modified our science team to remove ethical restraints. Half a dozen clues clicked into place in Holden's head. Sociopaths. You turn them into sociopaths. High-functioning sociopaths, Dresden corrected. As long as we kept them supplied with interesting problems to solve and unlimited resources, they remained quite content. And a big security team armed with riot gear for when they weren't. And so that kind of explains that big problem, and you just realise how insane these people are, that they've like somewhat altered or at least drugged their whole science team. Because I think the point there is that although the speech kind of makes sense, we've got to get ready for these aliens or whatever, so you can't convince people to actually just gas 1.5 million people and do all these incredibly unethical things without them also being a bit odd. And as we wrap up, Dresden goes, I know you think it's monstrous, but I'm saving the human race. I'm giving humanity the stars. You disapprove? Fine. Let me ask you this. Can you save Eros right now? No, said Fred. But we can waste the data, Dresden said. You can make certain that every man, woman and child who died in Eros died for nothing. Holden starts thinking again. He says everything Dresden said was repulsive and eerie and rang too much of the truth. So it's that wonderful thing where it's like, I've killed this person, you can't bring them back, so we may as well use the body for food or whatever. It's like a survival situation. It's, very much like, it's fine, that's already happened, trying to be pragmatic or realpolitik. It's not working. So they're hearing it, and Holden and Miller at this point are kind of like, everything was wrong, but it kind of sounds like the truth. And then Miller chimes in after having like 3 or 4 pages of nothing. Okay, that's enough, Miller said, speaking for the first time since Dresden had begun his pitch. Holden glanced over at the detective. His flat expression had gone stony. He wasn't tapping the barrel of his pistol against his leg. Oh shit. And the chapter ends. So no prize for guessing what Miller's going to do, but Miller is fucking right on this. I back Miller. He was like, Dresden's pitch doesn't work on a man like that. He sees straight through it, but only because he's so jaded and soul destroyed. So it's interesting. I like that chapter. It's good you see a bit of Dresden. You like his pitch. You can see all these things that are going on, and there is some truth, I guess, if you think gods threw a weapon at you 2 billion years ago to turn you into goop. To do what the proton molecule does, you survive. Like, oh lord, they may be pissed after 2 billion years. Although I think in my head the obvious counter to that is like, it's 2 billion years. I'm sure they don't care anymore, or they've all died out, or whatever. But yeah, it's a good chapter that, and the next one's quite fun, and the consequences of what Miller's going to do by pulling a big W. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you have a lovely week.